What's up? Corey Lennox here for Piano with Corey. Now today I want to continue talking about how to get better at sight reading. You know, I already made one video on this and it's about why not to use every good boy does fine and good boys do fine always. These classic sentences we're all taught. I have a video about why you don't want to do that. But today I want to keep on going and talk about another tip to help you get better at sight reading. Now as I mentioned last time, I used to be terrible at sight reading. It's always going to be my worst area. But after having gone to Berkeley and just working on piano in my own time and now being a piano teacher, I've learned a lot of things that I was doing wrong. And I want to help you avoid the same mistakes that I made. If you're new to the channel, make sure to hit subscribe for more awesome piano videos like this. So let's talk about tip number 2 today. And here's what I'm going to ask you. The first time I sight read this piece of music right here, what percent of that is sight reading? 100%, right? Because I've never seen this music before. Now, the second time I play through it, maybe it's only 80-90% sight reading because I'm already starting to memorize some of it. Maybe the third time it's like 60% sight reading because now I've got some muscle memory worked into my hands. So the point is, the more you go over the same piece of music, the less you're relying on pure sight reading and the more you're relying on all these other things. Now, here's where it becomes a crutch. If you're like me, you hate sight reading, you hate not knowing what the notes are, you hate not having it in your hands yet, and you just want to get to that point where you know the song, you're starting to memorize it, and you've already practiced it. Well, the problem with that is, you're not sight reading at that point, right? So if you want to get better at sight reading, here's my recommendation. Don't perfect a song. Sight read through it one time, doesn't matter how bad it is, doesn't matter if you don't have the rhythm so the dynamic's perfect, just try and get through it. Go through that initial sight reading phase and then move on to a different song. Now of course when I'm teaching, I highly recommend you go through and you perfect all the different sections, you get all the details. But if you're just trying to get better at sight reading, you need to work out that sight reading muscle. So I'm not talking, working on the same piece of music over and over again, because as we went over, every time you do that, the less and less of it's sight reading. What you do instead is you look at fresh pieces you've never seen before and you fight your way through it. And I say fight because those of you who are bad at sight reading like I used to be, you know it's not fun. But this is one of those things in piano where you sort of have to buckle down and be a little bit disciplined. And I can almost guarantee you, if you're bad at sight reading, it's probably part of a cycle, right? You're bad at sight reading so you don't want to work on it because it's not fun. Because you don't work on it, you get worse and worse. And that makes you want to avoid practicing it. And it's just the cycle that repeats itself and you've got to break it. You've got to have the discipline to sit down and say, you know what, this isn't going to be fun. This might be a little bit painful, but I'm going to just read through this brand new song. I'm not going to perfect it. Not going to rely on memorization. Not going to rely on knowing the song. I'm going to look at a totally new sheet of music, run through it one time, and move on to a new sheet of music and repeat. It's sort of similar to something that happens in weightlifting. So weightlifters out there know sometimes if you do an exercise wrong, instead of isolating the muscle you want to work on, other muscles are coming in to help it. And really, you don't get the benefit of the exercise because you're doing it incorrectly. With sight reading, it's a very similar idea. Because that's a weak muscle, sometimes we try and overcompensate with all these other things like memorization and muscle memory. What we want to do instead is strip it back and isolate 100% of that sight reading muscle. And how do we do that again? Well, we read through a brand new piece one time only. 100% of that is going to be new, 100% of that is going to be sight reading. And this plays out in some interesting ways. So I've noticed typically the better someone is at sight reading, the worse they are at memorization. And vice versa, the worse they are at sight reading, the better they are at memorization. And that's because if you're great at sight reading, you don't need to memorize the piece. It's all right there in front of you, you just play it, and it's all good. Now on the other hand, if you're bad at sight reading, then you're relying on your memory, you're trying to memorize each line as you go, and you're really focusing on that element of it. So both parties, I try and stretch them to get them to do the one they're less comfortable with. If you're bad at sight reading, you need to get comfortable not playing your pieces from memory by playing one line over and over or the same song over and over. You need to get better at looking at a song fresh and just launching into it with no memory of it whatsoever. And typically the sight readers who are bad at memorization, they need to step away from the sheet music and try either, learning a song that someone else is just teaching them or learning a song by ear anything without the sheet music in front of them is going to help them improve their memorization. And this brings us to your action step for the video. What I want you to do for this lesson is, however long your practice time is, I want you to spend that time sight reading brand new pieces one time through. So if you have 20 minutes to practice, spend 20 minutes reading through new piece after new piece after new piece. I guarantee you that A, you're going to absolutely hate it, but B, you're going to get so much better at sight reading songs. So get out there, work on it, get it done, and get better at sight reading. Until next time, this is Corey Lennox for Piano with Corey. Piano on.